Dave. Dave's back.
You guys see me?
Yeah.
I'm back.
You're back. Yay.
Wow. Okay.
Cool.
Okay, brilliant. So let's start that over. This is kind of typical of me, to be honest. I think wherever I go, there's glitches that follow because I love them so much, but also loathe them.
Well, it's teething. It's all just teething issues with when you're trying to do stuff with new technology. You know, like it's at some point you're going to run into something and it's going to take that extra couple of minutes to figure out. And for a lot of people, that's the barrier that stops them moving forward. And Dave, it's obvious looking from all your work over the years that you are not one of those people. You're someone who sees those barriers as a challenge and just, you know, cracks through them. Oh yeah, and I just love glitches too. I mean, beyond like having them mess with something very utilitarian that you're trying to do. I mean, I think aesthetically glitches are like kind of the heart of a lot of the media we've created at our studio, and I love the unpredictability and just the chaos inherent in glitches. So let's go back to that story again, where we can maybe condense it a little, because we don't want to, we've eaten up a bit of time with tech stuff. But basically, like, I want to know, let's even go earlier than you working with Flylo and working with all these amazing people. Sure. Like, as a kid, what's your first memory of technology or computers? Or, like, were you a typical, like, break open the stereo to see how it works, you know, stick your fingers in the motherboard, that kind of thing? Like...
It's so funny you say that, because definitely that was the most common thing I would do with a piece of electronics in the house, is just literally break it apart and think that I could maybe put it back together in some meaningful way, but that was never the case. Like my parents, would discover that I just broken the phone and sort of taken it apart to try to, understand what was going on, and really, I mean, even before anything technological in terms of me making art, I was drawing a lot, and I was drawing kind of compulsively, and I still draw all the time, because I actually find it to be a really good break from all the technology, and it's so much, there's so many less points at which the machine can break down if you're just dealing with a pen and a piece of paper. It's so simple, and so I love that form, and yet most of the things I was drawing when I was younger were kind of strange machines, and or I'd have like a shark, say, and then have a cross section of it, and there'd be all these weird mechanisms inside of it, and I always thought there was just, I don't know, something interesting about discovering the internal workings of something and kind of exploring those in art. And a lot of my interest was, almost in a vague way, kind of more scientific than it was in specifically being a certain kind of artist or something like that. And so you're drawing, you're breaking open things to figure out how electronics works, but you have a music background as well, yeah? Like, where does your relationship with music come from? Yeah, so I actually started taking piano lessons when I was pretty young, and took classical piano for maybe 7 or 8 years. But once I was a teenager, I was listening to a lot of music that I really loved, and that I wanted to learn how to kind of make music like that. I was listening to 9 Inch Nails and Radiohead, and when I would bring these things to my classical piano teacher, obviously he didn't really know what to do with someone that wanted to make that kind of music. And I listened to some jazz, and I asked him, I was like, I want to learn how to play jazz on piano, and he said, "Oh, I can't teach you jazz. There's no rules to jazz. It doesn't make any sense. You can't." Just he had disdain basically for jazz, and so and I used to like to kind of remix classical pieces, like I would like play Mozart's Fantasy in D minor kind of as fast as I could, because at a certain point it approximated like metal to me. It was just like this crazy kind of
distortion of the original piece. And then at one point, my piano teacher yelled at me, just said, "Don't fuck with Mozart." And at that point, I was like, okay, I'm going to stop taking classical piano lessons. And,
right. Because I want to fuck with Mozart.
Yeah, I want to fuck with Mozart. Yeah, I want to, like, do something with media and with past compositions and kind of like, try to like mess with the reality that I'm given, and not just sort of like, play it back. And so obviously I gained a lot of respect over the years for classical music and didn't just have, retain that gut reaction that I did at the time. But that kind of led me into electronic music, because once I stopped classical piano, I started, making electronic music compositions in Pro Tools. And I was kind of lucky because my dad, being a production sound mixer and film, kind of had all this really cool audio gear lying around. So I'd, ask him, like, "Dad, can I borrow, a Sennheiser microphone or whatever?" And he just, had so many things available and was really encouraging for me just experimenting with audio, and got me a Pro Tools LE setup, which I was probably like 13 or 14 at that point. And so I started, cutting up pieces of audio, recording weird pieces of audio in my room, like, taking a Coke can and just, crumpling it up and then cutting up that piece of audio and trying to make a composition out of it. And I really liked all the possibilities with electronic music, and it's funny that I haven't really, explored that as a career too much, but I still make music all the time. And to me, it's just sort of, it's like almost like journal entries or something. And I think that also just being so interested in sound and how it affects people really tied into all my visual work too. It's almost inextricable, because to me, these things are inherently related and can be a part of a bigger puzzle.
Yeah.
Well, it means experience.
It means you have an intuitive kind of understanding of how music and visuals should work together. And I imagine it also, like, so we can now like talk about some of the amazing collaborators you've worked with, because I imagine having that musical background yourself, Dave, like, helps you when you are talking to your collaborators to kind of get on the same page and speak the same language in a way that not all visual artists can. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think it can be helpful for sure, and I would sort of extend that to a lot of the people I work with too, and who I really love kind of in the music space, creating visual art for music. That a lot of them are musicians.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the people at our studio are also musicians, and it's just almost from a very basic level, it's nice when you can sort of communicate on the level of how something makes you feel musically, and then also kind of like synesthetically trying to translate that to something visual, because often one of the first parts of our process in making any visuals to music is kind of a really free form phase where, myself or anyone who's taking the creative lead at the studio will just like close their eyes listening to the music that we're trying to work to, and see what's there immediately without too many preconceptions, and obviously that gets tempered and shaped over time, and when we're working with a musician, we really want to honor their vision as well, and their universe outside of just whatever we're working on, try to like bring all that in, so it's a cohesive part of their body of work as well. But yeah, I think it's really important. Maybe not to. Doesn't mean everyone has to have a massive
music, a base of music knowledge, who's working in the visual arts to music, but it is nice when there's, first of all, a love of music. That's like the key thing, right? And then beyond that, having some understanding technically what's going on, and then just feeling, really being able to feel what's going on in the music, and assess such like amorphous things as vibe, like what should the vibe of these visuals be. Hello?
We just got a random hello from Nirmala. That was good.
Oh yeah. Hey Nirmala.
She's back. I just want to say, hey, for anyone who's just like jumping into the stream, hi. It's we're chatting at the moment with David Wexler, who is one of the founders of Strangeloop Studios. He's worked with incredible people as a visual artist, doing live visuals, music videos, other kind of experiments. He's worked with Flying Lotus, and his studios work with Kendrick Lamar and Bonobo and Erykah Badu, and we could go on listing all the incredible people that you've been lucky enough to work with, Dave. But we're really here to talk about some of your ideas and big ideas around music and tech. So just want to say, like, anyone in the chat, we got a lot more people here than we expected, which is so lovely. So it's great. Like, introduce yourselves. Let us know where you're streaming in from. I'm in Melbourne, Nirmala's in Melbourne, Dave is in LA. I know a bunch of you are in different parts of the world. And if you got questions, you just drop them in the chat, because we're keeping an eye on it. We're going to have our conversation, but we want you to be part of it too. And, a bit later, we'll probably have a bit of a big kind of Q&A hang session too. So, please do say hi in the chat. And while you're here, if you want to follow us so you can be notified when we do this again, we do this every month. We're not the most regular of Twitch streamers at Spirit Level, but we're getting the hang of it. So while you're here, drop us a follow, and then you'll get notified when we do this again. So, okay. Let's talk about, let's just sort of finish the origin story of you, Dave, with the founding of Strangeloop Studios and all of these kind of incredible collaborators that you've become in contact with. I'm kind of get the impression, reading some of your stuff, that it was working with Flying Lotus and developing visuals for him that kind of put you then on the radar for a bunch of other artists reaching out, like The Weeknd, to say, like, yes, yeah. Is that kind of how it went?
Exactly. Yeah. I really can't stress this enough, that Flying Lotus basically gave me the opportunity to have a career doing crazy video art, and so I'm really eternally thankful to him as a friend and a collaborator. And I think that also it was just very nice having him be the first artist that I was really working with on any significant level, because he's such a forward-thinking individual, and really always saw that possibility, I think, for how visuals and music could relate in new ways and make some emergent forms that hadn't existed. And I mean, it plays right into the fact that we met in film school, of all places, and it was really before he was Flying Lotus, and so
this is a Flylo set here, isn't it?
Yeah. That's so this is a Flylo set. God, where was this? This might have been Fuck Yeah Fest. And
a shout out in the stream if you've seen the Flying Lotus 3D set, because we'd love to hear from you. So tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious too on this stuff. Like, what's your collaboration process? Because I think it's interesting. Like, one thing I think we're interested at the spirit level anyway is like this collaboration between musicians and other types of artists, and how kind of that process, rather than it being like this linear process, is I'm kind of curious if any of your kind of like concepts influence the music in any way. Like, just what's kind of the crossover, I guess, is what we're curious about.
Sure. I think on the collaboration front, speaking even more broadly in terms of the Flying Lotus show, it's interesting because it would be nice, like my ego would be stoked if I could be like, oh, like, yeah, no, I'm the guy that did that whole show. But it's really, I feel like it's really important to state that the Flying Lotus show over the course of its existence has been a huge collaboration with so many different animators, obviously with Flying Lotus, even being involved a lot on the visual end and sort of both making suggestions for what he wants in the show, and then also us bringing in some of his film work into the show because he's really an incredible filmmaker beyond just being a musician. So like, even though I've been involved, I think in a high level on creative direction, along with John King, who goes by Time Boy, who I've worked with forever on the show. It's such a huge group of people that have been involved in making this show over the years. And like this animation, like I did not make this clip that you're looking at on the 3D screen. That was created by one of the animators we've worked with really closely over the years, Ian Valentine, who goes by Rakecast Future Fantasy. If you want to find him on Instagram, he has really, really cool work. And so, live over the years, I've been pretty much the person, along with John, controlling the show and making all those kind of live decisions with all the content libraries we've developed. And that's been really fun to have that part of the process in my court as well, because the show is actually not time coded like many other shows we work on. It's all live and it's extemporaneous. We don't know what Lotus is going to do any given night, so it really has kept it very interesting over the years, because there's definitely an improvisational element, and I think often when you get with when you're working on shows at a certain level, it seems like a big risk to do that, and I understand like why you wouldn't want the whole thing to be primarily improvisational, but Lotus has really trusted John and I over the years to make those decisions live. And so even though we might get different routines that we do, like we sort of learn over time, like, yeah, this is, if he plays this track, we're going to do this and this and this. It's still always a question mark. And I love the fact that it can fall apart. It just, it makes it exciting, rather than if it's just, we're click and play, or it's all kind of synchronized. That will be a tighter show. Like that will be, a more articulate show potentially, but maybe a less interesting show sometimes. I'm not saying all time-coded shows are uninteresting, but definitely for me personally as an artist, it's really exciting to kind of not know what we're going to do next. Like to, look at John and be like, all right, what's happening here? Let's try to, match it visually. Yeah.
There's so many other things for us to talk to you about, because you've experimented across so many different fields, Dave. But just sticking on the live visuals for a second, this Flying Lotus show, which a lot of people would know you for, even the Flamagra tour is essentially like an update of his previous 3D show. Like for you, are there newer projects or simply newer ideas about how to use technology to kind of level up the live experience that you're really excited about, or that you've been playing with, maybe with other artists or just in your own time? Like what's exciting you the most about, pushing the live space forward with technology?
Well, it's interesting at this moment because obviously we don't have any live shows going on, and it's something that, we're all dealing with collectively, and our industry is certainly dealing with, and yet I think also some of the things that that I've been moving towards, which are not better than the live experience, but they're just different, and they're other ways of exploring, creativity and also, I guess, a kind of social interaction, but a more virtual kind. A lot of those things I've been kind of engaged with for a long time, even before it became a necessity, which it definitely is right now. And so it was interesting that all of a sudden it seemed like there was a lot of interest in some of the things that I've been sort of engaged with for a while. And one of those things is VR and virtual concerts, and kind of this idea of creating a show that can be accessed by many more people than could actually fit in any concert space, and also doesn't have any of the limitations of our reality, because a lot of times in for instance just the Flying Lotus shows, we used to do layer 3, which had multiple layers, trying to get a more three-dimensional, more immersive effect, and then we moved on to full 3D LED, which in collaboration with 3D Live, the production partner to create that, we were trying to get more and more like impossible things to happen on stage, but ultimately it's kind of like if you're trying to make a more and more impossible concert environment, eventually it's going to become something that's entirely digital.
Yeah, that is literally impossible. That can only happen. Yeah.
But as I said, I don't think that means it will ever replace the live experience, because that's something really unique. It's another realm we can kind of explore, and so that kind of brings us to a lot of the work that I've done with WaveVR, now WaveXR, where we actually, trying to think where this all started. I met one of the founders of Wave, Adam Arrigo, quite some time ago. I think I met him at the Arcasanti Form Festival, which is a really incredible festival out in the desert. And he showed me sort of a deck of some of the things that they were working on, and I saw a lot of imagery that was actually my animation or things from shows that I was working on in the deck, and
right. That's cheeky.
So exactly. It was kind of a funny moment because Adam said, I didn't know if that was the right thing to do, to send you this deck that had your work, and for me I was just like, oh, this is like, this is really flattering, this is cool. And
yeah, it could go either way, couldn't it? You're either going to be like really upset or you're going to be like flattered.
Exactly.
Like, oh wow,
I don't care.
Yeah.
I thought it was just cool, and it was cool to think that someone was making a VR platform for concerts and wanted sort of out there aesthetics, and wanted to be able to not just emulate a real world concert, which I thought was probably the least interesting aspect of doing any kind of virtual concert, but seeing like what can we do with this medium that is different than a live concert, and it seemed like there was almost this kind of convergence between video game worlds and concert experiences. And so we really, with that basic premise that we were going to try to go like beyond a concert, do things that are impossible, and not just emulate, that was kind of the starting point for a lot of the Wave projects. And so we got to work with a lot of different artists. This that we're playing right now is from the Glitch Mob VR show, which is still one of my favorites. And as people now are experiencing more of this kind of video game concert crossover. I think that it's funny because this was some time ago, but I think it still holds up as a pretty wild experience. And I feel like just looking at these videos too, I feel really kind of thankful that we were able to go so far and just basically like explore a lot of the possibilities of VR, because the truth is, like, all of these things are kind of experiments, you know, that they were released into the world and people could go on Oculus or Vive and experience them. But I really feel like no one knew exactly what to do with the medium. So it was a real exciting time to just like, you know, throw really psychedelic ideas at the wall and like see what worked.
Yeah, one question I have actually, like, coming from film and like a 2D background, like when you kind of moved into 3D, how did you kind of approach that? Because I think that's still really a question I have about like designing a performance experience in VR. Like, what's your new kind of like tools that you can play with, or how do you kind of approach like thinking about doing that when you do have these kind of like limitless possibilities?
Yeah, you know, I really loved when I realized that VR could be kind of more tactile, like you could sculpt things in Oculus Medium, and it was more like drawing, actually. Suddenly you're kind of using this piece of software that rather than having to deal with like a bunch of clunky menus and sliders and checkboxes, you were kind of doing something expressive. And one of the people we work with a lot is an artist named Steve Teeps, who
he's in the chat actually, Steve.
Oh, is he?
Yeah,
he's Steve.
Yeah.
Oh,
hey,
what up, Steve? Shout out to Steve. And I sort of like connected with him a lot, on like just talking about what you could do with Oculus Medium and with Tilt Brush, and seeing the things that he was doing too, and kind of realizing how much potential there was there. So in working with the Wave, I would often use Oculus Medium to construct models. For instance, when you're looking at the Toki Monster show over here, most of these models I made in Oculus Medium. And I was just super lucky to be working with the Wave team, which does all their stuff in Unity. And so while I was able to kind of make some of the props that would be a part of this fleshing out this world, they really championed all this animation and allowed for a situation where people could connect in VR and actually play different stems from the music and remix them live with one of these kind of virtual instruments that we created. So
that's awesome.
Yes. So I think that I don't know if that answered the question, but it's kind of like
no, I think really that totally answered the question. I think it's like, and I think that's really interesting, the concept of it's almost going back to like that drawing, like a more intuitive drawing or painting kind of analogy, which is cool too, actually.
To be honest, I'm looking forward to when everything is more like that, because I don't like what a lot of us as graphic designers have to do on a daily basis, which there's so much there that is technically very challenging and can sometimes take you out of a creative mindset, in my experience. Whereas if like there can be some almost collapsing of all this functionality into new methods that allow us to be more experimental, more exploratory, and in more of a kind of real-time situation, I think that's going to really help democratize 3D design for people, and then B, for the people that are already in it, just make it a more joyful kind of psychedelic experience, because I mean, no one likes render times, no one likes dealing with sort of Octane crashing all the time. I don't want to speak ill of them. I love Octane, but no one wants to deal with sort of the things that are keeping you from expressing an idea. And yeah. I should mention also, when we were playing those videos, like there's a fair bit of frame rate dropping. Like all of these videos look a lot better when not inside this platform right now. I'm kind of asking a lot of my poor little MacBook Pro to be streaming and running this 3D platform at the same time, so the frame rate's kind of taken a bit of a hit. But if you have just dropped in on Twitch or you've been watching on YouTube and you've gotten half an hour in and you've forgotten what it is you're even watching, you are watching Spirit Level's Future of Music Meetup. Spirit Level is a record label based in Melbourne. I'm the label's founder, and Namala is here too. She helps run The Lab, which is our project. Where are you? There you are. The Lab is essentially our kind of project for exploring technology and how it kind of interacts with music. And we're talking with David Wexler, aka Strangeloop, founder of Strangeloop Studios, who, when we started this idea, Dave, like your name was near the top of the list in terms of people we wanted to talk to, because we just knew that you were, across so many different interesting fields and right on the edge of all of it. So thanks for taking the time out for sure. And shouts to everyone in the stream. Feel free to speak up, say good day, drop a question in for us. We're here hanging out. We'll be here for a little bit. I only had one more thing I wanted to say about VR, and it kind of goes to what you were saying just then, Dave, about like platforms being more accessible. It feels like even just watching this Glitch Mob thing, which like is so visually stunning, and it reminds me inevitably of that kind of psychedelic Travis Scott Fortnite experience that got so much kind of buzz and energy around it. But to look at this and then realize that you were doing this in 2018, it makes you realize how a lot of this stuff has existed for a few years, and it's really just about the platforms catching up. Like WaveXR is doing their best to establish themselves as a platform, but obviously can't possibly have the reach of a Fortnite, for example. So when Travis Scott jumps in Fortnite and does it, bam, it's this huge explosion. Like how much of this do you feel like is just, and this might be something for you across all of your work, where it feels like you're just waiting for those big platforms to catch up so that more people will see the work, Yeah, if I were thinking just about, how much reach something had that I was doing, I feel like I'd go insane all the time, because I'm usually kind of half the time in kind of an esoteric space, sometimes making visuals for big concerts. But I think that the Wave was just it has been a really just exciting creative venue in a sense, and I love the team there. So that they now are obviously not just in VR; they're doing streaming shows that don't require headsets, so that they can be, more democratized. And I think there's going to be a lot of different people working in that space. I don't always think about it as just like who's going to conquer the space, because I see virtual concerts as well as virtual beings and these kinds of things is really like a new territory, a new medium. So it should be populated with lots of different platforms and entities and different types of experiences, because it's like if you were to say once one painter was a great success, it's like, okay, well, yeah, we've done painting now, like that already happened. Like I think that it's when we're dealing with virtual concerts and virtual just realities, it is on that level that it's a new type of artwork. And so I'm kind of excited to see everything from someone dreaming something up just on their home computer to Riot Games, producing massive experiences with millions and millions of people watching.
Are you a big gamer, Dave? Do you play any of those games?
Oh man, yeah. I do play Fortnite quite a bit with my co-founder Ian Simon, and we kind of use it as a way to also like talk about our company because we can game and then also just be chatting about stuff, and so it's kind of like a hangout. And then I have to say I've been playing The Last of Us 2 just for the last week. That is a phenomenal game. I think it's really cool to see games where clearly like cinema and gaming is becoming almost the same thing, and that to me is really, really exciting. I almost love when different mediums coalesce, and at first it might be this kind of like awkward thing, but eventually there's a new form that emerges, and to me that's usually where the most interesting stuff is like where there's kind of that overlap that you wouldn't expect, because we're pretty conditioned to think of like, okay, this is the format for a movie, and this is a format for an RPG, but when you're playing the Last of Us, once you're 10 hours into this narrative experience, you're thinking this is kind of like a really good movie, but I'm also playing the game, and I love that there can be these crossover experiences.
That's actually something I think you brought up with like the crossover with music and new media spaces. Yeah, I think that's I think that's something we kind of talk about, like this idea of like what is the future of the album? Like right now it's like music is still predominantly like MP3 files and video files, and that's kind of how people experience it. But with things like what could an immersive gaming experience of an album could be? I don't know if that stuff you play with. I mean, I think the stuff you've done already kind of deals with that, but.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the Toki Monster experience and the Glitch Mob experience, both were examples of kind of making a version of the album that was interactive and also visual, and kind of where you can immerse yourself in the experience. It's sort of meta because the Glitch Mob narrative is about this kid in the future who puts on a device that allows them to go on a very kind of like psychedelic journey with the Glitch Mob music, and so even though some of that is possible now, and we kind of demonstrated it in the experience, I see a future where that that's much more possible and much more common, that we would be able to have really, really engaging and completely transformative, fully immersive experiences that are maybe grounded by music and that art form, but really branch off into all these other directions. That to me is really, really exciting.
Yeah, and again, I think inevitably it does a bit come back down to platform. Like there are some people saying that essentially like the next wave of existing on the internet is going to be inside 3D platforms. So whether it's Fortnite or Facebook evolving into something, or a new thing that we don't even know about yet, it's that idea that that eventually, the same way that we log on to Facebook, that we log on to Twitch, we log on to wherever to hang out and experience stuff, or we log on to Netflix, we'll be logging on to a 3D environment where you'll be able to experience the Glitch Mob's new environment, or Beyonce's new environment, or create your own environment. Like feels all the tech is kind of there for that now, and it feels like it's just going to be whether it really catches on and captures people's imagination and is an experience that they want to be having every day, or when
Sure.
they get home from work, and or not, which is that's still feels like it's the big open question mark with these experiences. Can they kind of go beyond being like interesting things to check out to being like an everyday experience of art or experience of culture or whatever?
Definitely, yeah. And at a certain point, will people want to activate their neural link and completely transcend this physical reality and go into an entirely convincing virtual space?
Good segue.
I think that's a good segue.
Speaking of neural links and neural pathways, let's we can touch on this a bit, because I know that you've just been experimenting with it like most technologists who are just very curious. I think everybody is aware that machine learning is this frontier of processing information and creating things, creating art. And can you talk us a little bit about your experiences with mucking around with machine learning to create things? We just see like examples of a couple of little videos of yours here, but can you talk us through just what appeals to you about working with this technology?
Yeah, definitely. I'll preface all this by saying I'm just like tinkering with this stuff, and I'm not a coder. I'm not. There's so many people that are going so much deeper than me, but I'm definitely deeply fascinated in it, and I can maybe see where some of it's going. These were created with Runway ML, which is what I've been using, and I really love it because it makes machine learning accessible to people like myself who might be artistic, but we don't have a huge background in coding. And so if we look on the left, that sequence playing, this was actually a trained GANs system. So it's producing endless permutations of mushrooms. I gave it thousands of images of mushrooms, and my friend Gavin Gamboa helped me collect all these images and get a methodology together that could allow for me to sort of get a bunch of image sets. So yeah, what I love about it is, beyond it just being this kind of hypnotic, psychedelic look, which it definitely is. I think, all these kind of GAN systems produce these really psychedelic looks through what they call latent walks. To me, it represents as big a leap in art as sampling.
Yeah.
Like sampling was a massive leap in how we can create art, and I think that when you're getting into neural nets, it's this idea that beyond just cutting things up and reassembling them and augmenting them, you have a way that the computer can understand a little bit of what an image set is, or the aesthetic properties of a video, and that's just obviously the starting point, because it can be applied to any sort of data set. So we can talk about music or things that we also hold very dear as sort of like the heart of authenticity in something, like the sound of my voice. Like there's obviously systems now to take 20 minutes of me speaking and could make an artificial voice that pretty much sounds like me. So it is like the next wave of sampling, and I get there's a lot of worry around it, and I mean I worry about it too. Like what does that mean if you can take all of my artwork eventually and just say, hey, make a Strangeloop generator, like just generate that sort of artwork. But more than worried about it, I'm kind of just excited because I think that for people that are dabbling in it, it provides all these creative possibilities. And you know, I think that there's always kind of worries of losing some authentic originality. There was that with sampling. There was tons of people rallying against sampling and saying, well, that's not a real art form if you're just taking other pieces of work and you know, cutting them up and making something new. And to me, it's just, neural nets are like sampling on a granular level. It's like sampling where you can understand the DNA of a video, of imagery, and then splice it together with other images and other videos. And so,
and,
you know,
and similar to sampling, you know, I think it'll be the legal and the ethical question marks that machine learning raises, and training nets on data sets, and they'll take decades to figure out. You know, they just don't mesh with our current legal understandings, like our current structures around copyright and rights and data and privacy.
Exactly,
you know, so it's like but the tech moves so quickly and continues to move so quickly that it's either got to catch up or.
I think the other interesting thing about this type of technology too is that maybe it will change kind of like our own way of thinking about rights and copyright. Like, I think right now, you know, it is still a system that's really based on this, you know, like, I don't know, it's like, if you get to a point where you literally can be creating just with these, like, it's your ideas essentially that are the seed, and then it's like, you can just generate all this stuff. Like, what is copyright in that context? And I feel like, I mean, obviously not in the next few years, but in the next, like, who knows, in 20 years from now, these conversations around copyright might be so, really totally beyond us. And I think this technology is really, exactly. It's going to be starting to push us to rethink about what it means, to kind of own your own work, or like, you know, what is ownership in that space?
Yeah,
I completely agree.
I hate to be pessimistic, but I feel like when sampling was really kicking off, they probably said exactly the same thing. You know, 40 years ago, they were probably like, "Oh, imagine in 1995, like we'll have such radical different ideas around copyright." And it's 40 years later, and still, you know, the system hasn't really shifted to compensate. So
well, I mean, it's interesting though, because there's sort of an event horizon that I think we're approaching in terms of copyright, where at a certain point, I mean, if you're building a lot of media with neural nets, how on earth would someone decipher what imagery had gone into it? I mean, definitely this mushroom piece we're looking at right now, or either of these other pieces, have copyrighted material in them.
Yeah,
I'm sure of it. And you know, this one is actually trained on visionary art that I really like, and this is trained on Geiger imagery, but with also a deep dream overlay happening here, and so I wouldn't claim ownership over any of these works, but I also would definitely resist any system that would tell me that I couldn't play around and try these out as experiments. And that's obviously the difficulty of copywriting in general. You do want people to be paid for their works and to be able to track their works. But when it starts limiting creative experimentation, and when people are, you know, pursued legally for really silly reasons, sometimes, you know, you start questioning the whole system of
totally.
Why are we doing it this way?
Yeah, I think, and it's like it backs into like this, you know, it's like, and this is a much bigger discussion we don't have to get into, but it does back into like this whole system of how we value things in currently. And I think, like, you know, these tangible things versus maybe something. I don't know. It's an interesting conversation, but who knows in 20 years from now what it will be like, because I think this stuff is accelerating so quickly. And actually, like, on that topic, I wanted to, because I know we're kind of reaching maybe time for questions from the audience. It'd be cool to talk about the spirit bomb your Spirit Bomb label and the project.
Definitely.
That's like, I think this kind of is the pinnacle maybe of all the stuff we've been talking about.
Yeah. Let's walk over there.
Spirit Level meets Spirit Bomb.
I know. I loved that you guys chose the name Spirit Level. I thought it was so coherent with what we've been working on. And so basically, this idea has been in the works for a long time, but really at the end of last year, we started moving a lot of our resources towards just making it a reality. And so even though a lot of it's pre-launch, it represents what I'm really excited about and we're really excited about as a studio, which is basically this idea of a collective of virtual artists, synthetic beings. And I feel like the notion of a synthetic being is much more common now in media, with things like some of the virtual influencers like Lil Miquela or Emogram. And then it's also existed for a long time with projects like the Gorillaz project or Hatsune Miku. These are characters that release music and seemingly have a kind of life, and blur those lines a little bit where we're not totally sure, like, is this something real or does it represent a specific person, or is it something entirely bespoke and digital? And one of the things that just me feel like this is a project that I could dig into for 10 years or something, not just like during one season or one quarter. One of the things that got me excited about that was it brought together what I love about science fiction and mythology and philosophy with music culture. And so, while we just talked a lot about AI, and obviously our narrative, our whole presentation of this collective relates a lot with AI, it shouldn't be mistaken for the fact that we do have real musicians and real visual artists who are contributing to these beings and making this a reality. And that's really important to us, because we think that you can certainly, even right now, approximate art with neural nets, and in the future it will be different. There's a better way of saying that, because I think it is an art in and of itself. But what I'm trying to say is that we think it's really important that human beings are partnered with AI to create the next generation of these kind of cultural icons. And so, we've basically created a full mythology with all these characters, with backstories and a narrative which relates a lot with our philosophy, as well as creative people in this strange world, and then also allowed these characters to be vessels for musicians. So we're working with a lot of really incredible musicians, not all of whom I would be able to tell you right now, but it's really to me it's a new medium that is really, really exciting, and it does kind of bridge the gap between sci-fi narrative cinema and music culture.
Yeah, I'm really interested in, like, can you tell us maybe about some of them, and like how did you come up with their like identity? Like, do you start with their origin story, or do you start with a sound, or what's your kind of process for creating these kind of entities?
Yeah, so a part of the overall story is just something that I've been kind of circling around for probably my entire life, and it's just an idea that's really interesting to me, which is that all of these separate beings that we see in the collective are really a part of one one consciousness. They're one being, and they're split. They're fragmented, and so the narrative is kind of about them actually discovering that they are the same super intelligent consciousness, and so that was kind of like our starting point for the whole narrative. But then as we got into, you know, thinking about individual characters, which it's still expanding, but with these initial 5 that you see here, we were definitely thinking of things that we thought would, you know, be cool and interesting, like aesthetically, but we also started wondering about the different sides of artificial intelligence, and having some of that inform the characters, because artificial intelligence, while we think about some of the major things that could occur with it in the 21st century, it takes on all these different manifestations, and all seem kind of equally possible. You know, we could certainly destroy ourselves through artificial intelligence very, very easily. We could, you know, sort of merge with AI. Someone's knocking at my door.
Real life interrupts.
I'll just maybe let them go away. Okay. So yeah. So basically, you know, there's all these different possibilities, right? And they're not all positive or negative. They're all. Oh, God, 1 second.
Well, yeah. I mean, this
actually,
is all.
Tim, could you walk up and can we get a closer look at the
Absolutely.
the fan pic?
Oh, this one.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Check it out.
Can't
it's also
believe
inspiring.
My buddy Jake just defied all social distancing, and he's just came over haphazardly without a mask.
Oh,
Jake, what are you doing?
Jake, put a mask on.
Get it together, Jake.
So I'll try to finish my thought. Sorry about that. Yeah, we tried to have these different characters embody different possibilities for artificial intelligence, and sort of use them as vehicles to explore those ideas, because I think they're really, really fascinating ideas.
Do you think about like and how does it work as a label, I guess, like the logistics of it? Like if you're creating these artists, like how does the kind of logistics of actually putting out an album that is behind, like this is under their name, but then you've got a team of people that are working on their character, I guess. Yeah.
That side of it.
If you could talk about that, yeah.
I think I'll just skim the surface of it, because that side of it is the most complex side, and I had no idea that was going to be the most complex side. I thought, God, we're creating all these virtual beings, we need to figure out all the animation. We need to figure out how to have them run real time in Unreal so they can do, concerts or be interactive if they want to, like all this sort of stuff. And then what I realized was actually the most complex was kind of the existing, structures in the music industry for how to deal with rights and also with just, sort of making sure we have fair collaborations with everyone, which is really, really important to me, so that if someone is contributing to these beings, they're, they have a stake in the beings that's real, and that to me is really, really important, and also makes me think we might have the opportunity to restructure some of the things that might be counterintuitive to that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and assume that you're talking about, some of the people contributing like bits of music or ideas maybe tied up in traditional deals with publishers and labels and the kind of structures that are, that they are built around the existing, traditional copyright models, traditional royalty models. Like, how hard has it been to explain this to? Because artists, obviously, and the people you work with, the artists who would be friends of yours, I'm sure would just jump at the chance to work on this because it's so cool and fun. How hard is it navigating those conversations with the people from those companies that maybe don't have the imagination or even necessarily a desire to push something like this forward? How hard is that?
Yeah, I think that I actually feel lucky because we've, encountered a lot of people, even, within existing structures who are excited about new ways of doing things. And I think that it's really just about, knowing when an artist would be the right fit for this kind of endeavor. And some people I know, like we've worked with Beretta quite a bit from the Glitch Mob. Outside of the Glitch Mob, he makes so much phenomenal music. He has another project called Superposition with Matt Davis, and it's very different music from the Glitch Mob, but he's kind of like a hyper creative individual who, while he might have his main endeavor be the Glitch Mob, he also wants to be doing other things that might be outside of that. And so we've encountered that with a lot of musicians, actually, who we really love and who we've worked with over the years, that they might have their main brand that they obviously are, committed to and have worked on for a long time. And it's really important. But outside of that, they might want to be, exploring something entirely different. And so it can be seen as almost like a side project, but also a means through which they can collaborate with other musicians and visual artists. And in that context, these beings really are framed more as vessels for people to sort of collaborate on, if you will, or through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's like actually kind of interesting because I feel like a lot of like maybe more pop artists too, like in a sense, are almost vessels to for like, I mean, not to sound totally cynical, but there is still all these other people that are working behind the scenes to create that identity, that sound, that story. So yeah, it's an interesting idea actually, but yeah, cool.
Yeah. So this is really our big project right now and for the foreseeable future, really. Because I just see so many possibilities in this space, and it, in ways I feel like the surface of it might be, thinking of these entities as influencers, but that's not really where our interests are at. We think there'll be lots of, virtual influencers that have a certain function in the media space, but I'm very curious about how you could make a collective of beings that would actually, be sort of fueled by philosophy and music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Not by like a certain marketing sector that people are trying to reach or something. Yeah, totally. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we should just about open it up for questions if people want to
Sure.
chuck anything in the chat. I think we might have had a few earlier, but for anyone who's just like dropping by, we're chatting with Dave Wexler, who is from Strangeloop Studios. He also is Strangeloop. And
that one's been confusing for a lot of people because I sort of was like, I'm not really Strangeloop anymore. Like we've got our studio, and I think of all the people I work with as kind of Strangeloop, as well. And I never really wanted to do anything that was too ego based. Actually, like I just want, it's about the ideas and the art. So it's been a funny thing trying to kind of like walk those lines where I still go by that moniker, but it also extends to my co-founders and to all the animators I've been working with.
Yeah. We are Tim Shiel and Nirmala Shome, and we are part of a label in Melbourne called Spirit Level. And every month we do chats like this. This is the first time we've ever done it in this environment, though, Mozilla Hubs, which has been super, super fun. But if you want to know more about us, this is Spirit Bomb, which is the incredible virtual artist collective that Dave and his studio is working on. We're Spirit Level, we're a record label, and we do other stuff too. So if you've just dropped by, feel free to follow us on Twitch, so you know when we're going to do this again. When we start streaming again, you'll get notified, or you can find out about us on the internet. You just look for Spirit Level.
We've got to collaborate with those names.
We got to do that.
The Spirit Bomb Level.
Spirit Bomb Level.
Yeah.
I'm into it. I'm very into it.
One question actually that has come up a couple times, and usually the type of question we get, because people like to get into the details here, is, can you tell us about the tools that you use, like the different softwares that you use? And because a few people are asking, they're newbies, they want to know.
Yeah, of course. Maybe I'll start on the live visual side, which pretty much for most of my career I've been using Resolume for a lot of the live stuff, and I love Resolume. I would kind of describe it as like the Ableton of visuals, and it's very intuitive but very powerful, and we often use we both use MacBooks for visual stuff at the studio, and we use Alienware PCs, and so it just depends on kind of what we're doing, and how much processing power we need, how much GPU power we need. And then on the content creation side, that's kind of a much bigger set of tools, because I use a lot of different stuff, but Cinema 4D is definitely a go-to application. After Effects and Notch has been what I picked up in the last year, and made a lot of imagery for the Flying Lotus 3D show on. And Notch is really, really an incredible piece of software, and for someone that wants to do more real-time, more interactive 3D visuals or 2D visuals, Notch is a great piece of software to pick up. It's a little pricey. You do have to, sort of get basically a yearly subscription to it, and they send you a dongle, but it's really cool what you can do in it. It's all nodal based, so you kind of put all these nodes together to create what you want to create. Feels a lot more like I don't know, playing jazz or something than it does like operating, a 3D software package. It's very, you get to see the results immediately, so that's really wild. And then at our studio, we also use Houdini and Unreal, and at Wave, although I'm not a big, I don't really know how to use Unity super well. They're all Unity based.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. I've got another question here. Are there plans to release Spirit Bomb characters as and music as a sort of game experience? What are you kind of looking at that? Yeah.
Oh, that's funny you say that, because actually, one of the designers we work with, Vince McKelvey, was sort of looking at some of our designs and said, I could just mock up a game level with all the stuff we've been making. And we were like, yeah, sure, go for it. And he's just so quick that pretty much in a week we had this like beautiful playable level for Spirit Bomb with one of our characters, Zen. And so it was really cool, because it embodied what we want to do with these characters, meaning that we want to create characters that can exist very easily in video games or in concert spaces, or online, on social media. And so like, it's very important that they're transposable, that we can, quickly kind of allow that being to go into any media space and work within it. And so, yeah, I've played a Spirit Bomb level we created, and it was really fun. And that's definitely a part of the future for how we're thinking about these characters.
Well, that's also just our collaboration Spirit Bomb level. So I think it's...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. One other question too. What are some of your like sources of like visual inspiration, like aesthetic wise? Like where do you kind of, where do you kind of find stuff, or what kind of really inspires you creatively?
Yeah, I think, Instagram has become a place where, if you're following a lot of the graphic designers out there, it can be a really cool place to just see new work. But I definitely tend to go back to cinema a lot, and I'm just such a film geek that I probably, I don't know how many movies I watch a week, and just sort of like dissect movies. On the side, I just write film analysis pieces, because I'm so fascinated in film and inspired by film visually. Great directors, and so that's even more than like graphic design. That's usually where I'm looking, is in cinema. I'm a huge Tarkovsky fan. I don't know if any of you guys know his work.
No, what's some of his what are some films that he's done?
He made Ivan's Childhood, Andrei Rublev, Solaris, Stalker, Nostalgia, The Mirror, and The Sacrifice. I believe those are all of his films. And he had this kind of great love of nature. So when you're watching his films, he'll do some very abnormal things, like just, focus on moss for a minute, and for maybe for certain audiences, they'd be like, what the hell is going on? This is boring, like when's something going to happen? And, if you get into the mindset of his films, you realize, nothing needs to happen in a traditional sense. It's like he's poetically kind of dealing with nature and everything he's photographing in, as if it's completely alive and conscious, really. He's got a perspective that I really love, that he expressed in film, and that's also just, it ties into where I look for a lot of inspiration, which is natural systems. I mean, it's all about, natural systems, and then the mathematics behind natural systems, I think, are deeply interesting. Fractal systems, and noise, and kind of all the different elements that you can experience just in our world, but in ways sort of point to some higher dimensional space, because there is kind of a governing dynamics behind seemingly chaotic systems, and that to me is kind of the biggest source of inspiration.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, actually, I think you kind of mentioned like that kind of the visual, like psychedelic visuals and things like that, as well, just when we were kind of emailing earlier. Is that, like, I don't want to ask that question because I know we're streaming, but I also know in LA that there's a lot more stuff that's legal over there. Do you kind of, is that something that's like of interest to you? Like, do you kind of use that as a source of like of inspiration? I mean, I know that this idea of just kind of looking at psychedelics and how they can kind of, expand and rethink different things.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, without sort of saying anything too specific about Me, I will say that I think psychedelics represent, a kind of, how do you say, it's a means through which someone could, see the world from a lot of different angles, and also kind of see the world, with boundaries dissolved. Like I think it was Terence McKenna who said that's the common aspect that links a lot of hallucinogens together, is this kind of element of boundary dissolution, and that's very fascinating from the perspective of someone in visual arts, or music, really, any arts. But when you can see the world with some of the cultural boundaries that we put on it dissolved, and when the very small is kind of blurred with the cosmic, or when the self is blurred with the other, those are all really profound and interesting jumping off points for thinking about what we create, and also that sense of liberation that seems to be a common feature of a lot of psychedelic experiences, is I feel like a kind of noble pursuit to try to not just emulate, but sort of invoke in people through media. Because as the media gets more and more sophisticated, I imagine it'll be more and more possible to induce psychedelic experiences through media and technology. And it's that's definitely an inspiring realm.
Yeah, totally. No, that's cool. Taking it back to a totally different topic. A few people are asking about the studio itself, and how that is set up. Like, how big is your team? What kind of team do you have? Is it, what are kind of the skill sets?
Yeah, so we have a team of about 10 people, and most of them are animators, and I think we typically have hired too many artists. kill me for saying that, but we have a lot of artists, and so we also have a head of operations, Nick Marish, who kind of manages a lot of the projects, and we have sort of like a lot of generalists in a sense. We hired in that direction, that a lot of people can both animate and create conceptual designs and sketch, and everyone does have their kind of their niche to some degree that they're really good at. Some people are really good with environments. Some people are really good with typography and graphic design. But it's an interesting group.
Yeah, that's cool. And is everyone based in LA, or are you guys like spread out across?
Yeah, we're all based in LA. Although at this point it feels almost like we wouldn't have to be, because a lot of our work entirely is remote right now. We do have a studio in Culver City, but my co-founder Ian has been the only one really going in there recently. But we've still been able to move forward and create stuff, and it hasn't been totally an impediment being remote.
Yeah, totally. I think we're kind of finding that too. Like, things can continue to happen in some ways more efficiently.
Absolutely.
Which is funny. We've also got someone's asking here, can you give us some of your top movies, some favorite movies?
Oh, wow. Yeah, definitely can. I would say The Sacrifice by Tarkovsky is one of my favorite films. And then Akira is an obvious one. and Fantastic Planet.
Oh yeah, okay.
Really, really great film. So many good movies. Network. I'm just going to throw one that's kind of like out of that sort of psychedelic realm. Yeah, Network is one of the greatest films ever made, I think. And then, you know, I'll just be obvious and throw in 2001. Although, like, I feel like I could write a list that would be more of the deep cuts that I'm really, really into. I sort of feel like I've seen like every piece of psychedelic media imaginable. I've just been like voracious in terms of anything, you know, kind of outside the box, and a lot of video art. I love like Maya Deren and Jordan Belson, and let's see. Those are two that I would definitely recommend.
Yeah, I think everyone's gonna. I think we're probably going to send a follow-up email to everyone with the all these references, because everyone loves a list of references.
Love a good list. Well, I think in a sec what we might try, because I reckon it's about time, is we're going to open up this this hub that Dave and Namala and I have been chatting in. We're going to open it up. I reckon. I think if that feels like a good time, I reckon we can sort of wrap this part of it up, and but we could potentially keep talking inside the hub. But so before we, Namala, don't join the hub yet, because Namala and I are scared that as soon as you all join the hub, especially if all 243 of you join, it's going to crash our Twitch stream. So, but before we do that, people are coming in. I just wanted to say thanks to Dave for hanging out with us. You can catch up with his studio, Strangeloop. It's pretty easy to find on the internet. Come find us too. We're called Spirit Level. I'll drop a couple of links in the chat for anyone who's a bit more curious about us and the music that we do. We work with a bunch of different artists that are really interesting and worth following. If you're a fan of some of the stuff that Dave does, then you might be interested in some of the stuff that we do too. And
I just wanted to add to that I checked out a lot of the stuff on Spirit Level, and I think you guys are doing really, really wild stuff, and I love the amount of varied experimentation too. I would also encourage everyone to check out Spirit Level.
That's excellent, Dave. Yeah, thank you so much. We should definitely, a collab or something would be so fun if we figure out some way that we can team up, because I think we've got a lot of stuff in common, which is really fun.
Including the name. Spirit Bomb and Spirit Level. But, and so before we I might actually end the Twitch stream in a sec, but just want to say thanks to everyone who has been hanging out with us and sending questions. A lot more people jumping on board today than we expected, which is so cool. Please do follow us on Twitch, because we'll be doing this again in a few weeks' time. Another guest, another topic. Hit that follow button. Also, actually, Tim, before we end, one thing I just was going to say, that we did get we didn't get to do it at the start, but we got a bunch of City of Melbourne are doing a bunch of initiatives, which I might just copy and paste into the Twitch chat. I'll post that in there. But yeah, one of our main sponsors, City of Melbourne, who support this stream, do a lot to kind of encourage local and emerging artists in Melbourne and Victoria. So I'll post these links in here too for all the Victoria and Melbourne-based artists that have joined us too. Cool.
Very cool.
Twitch stream hasn't died yet. We've got a few people in here, but yeah, come join us in that link that Namala sent, because I'm gonna switch the Twitch stream off in a sec. But it's the link up there, hub.link. Click on that. It's really easy to select your own avatar and just jump in. And if you turn your mic on, we can all talk to each other inside the hub as well. So yeah, sorry, Dave, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say thanks so much for having me, and we can continue the discussion in the virtual realm.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.